Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to a very special Foundry virtual event today. I'm very honored to be here to welcome everybody. Please let us know on the chat where you're from. We have four amazing speakers today. We have our host, Dami Dada, Anna Conde, Mark Pinheiro, and Courtney Price, who will be joining us. We'll have also a wrap up and some shared resources. And if you have any questions, please put them in the questions tab. And if you just want to chat, there's the chat tab. We have some rules of engagement, and we're very happy to be here today and very excited, but there will be no tolerance of any kind of harassment or discrimination of any kind. So if there's any comments, people on the chat will be kicked out of the webinar. So we just have a few more rules of engagement to share. Please take a look, and we're happy to get started as soon as we can. So with that, I'd like to welcome our panel and turn the conversation over to my colleague, Dami. Thank you for being here and have a great webinar.
Okay. Hi everyone, good morning, good evening. It's evening where I'm at, so I'm in London, so it's about 6 o'clock. So my name's Dami. I've been at Foundry for just over a year. I've been a project manager for about up to 4 or 5 years now. Before Foundry, I worked at MediaCom as a project manager as well. My parents are from Nigeria. I was born and bred in the UK, so I've been here my whole life. I'm 26. Yeah, I live in South London, which is all I've ever known. And I'm quite glad we're doing this webinar. I think it's a great conversation to have, and I'd like to introduce you to the panel. So, Anne, go ahead.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This really means a lot to us. So thank you wherever you are. I've seen someone from South Africa, so thank you so much. My name is Anne. I am a VFX producer and also the central production manager at DNEG in London. I've been at DNEG for 3.5 years. My career goes back sort of 11 years. Started in advertising. Then I went on to do sort of immersive content, working in Full Dome production. And then I went on to do sort of more immersive content, sort of experiential design, working in the theme park industry. And then decided I wanted to come back and do proper VFX. So I came back to that. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey. I know we'll kind of get into an experience or something that kind of struck us later, but this is my summary. That's me. So I'll pass on to Courtney.
Hi, you're right. Yeah, so my name's Courtney Price. I'm a VFX artist, a new VFX artist and a creative director for DVS Design in the UK. So I've been in the industry from the early 2000s, I think 2005. Done loads of roles, pretty much worked all the way up from runner through to where I'm at now, where I'm a freelancer and I've got my own company. Yeah, I used to work for the Foundry for 5 years, which was probably the longest time I spent at any company. We'll get into why later, but yeah, I think that's probably it's an extended family because they've kind of helped me grow from. I joined there in my late 20s and left in early 30s. Those were kind of pivotal stages in my life. So yeah, definitely part of the team, bit of an extended family there. So yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Mark Pinheiro. I'm a filmmaker. I've been working in business for 30 years. I've been working through television networks, on film sets, camera assistants, clap loading, running, acting in front of the camera, on stage, on set, training in classrooms, and working in visual effects productions for the last 20 years. And last 10 years or so, I've kind of been working through my own company a lot, and currently studying an MA in screenwriting.
Nice, thank you. So we're just gonna jump right in. So we get to February, March, we're all in lockdown, so COVID-19 struck. We've had a global pandemic. And during that, so we've got that. And during that, we see the news about George Floyd's being brutally murdered. And that's another heavy thing for us as a Black community to kind of experience it. For me personally, it was like, it kind of made me look inwards and kind of understand what I've had to like bury over the years.
Sure.
So that's just with me. So I know that was a very, very tough period. It was a
Mhm.
very, very tough 2 weeks. Me and my friends and family, we literally had to have conversations.
Yep.
And it was kind of like, oh, you go through that as well. I go through that as well.
Yep.
And it was very, very dampening. I just want to know, how are you guys managing? Like, how did you manage, and how did you feel during that period?
Who wants to take it first? You might have to alley-oop one of us. I mean, yeah. So for me personally, it's as heartbreaking as it is. It's nothing new for us, and we've been here before. I think for me, or like I'm 36, and I think for me it was more an exhaustion. I was tired, I'm frustrated, I'm angry. It's kind of like, how many more times? And I think that is what the general reaction's been. And it's like, you know what, I'm tired of this. I hate the fact that we keep on seeing ourselves like this. Why do we, have to see ourselves like, why does the world view us like this? Or not even the world, let's say the Western society, which is the predominant, one of the more prominent powers in the world, see us like this. And there's a lot of discussions, a lot of reflection, a lot of education that needs to be done around this, that I think if we're ever really going to get over it or get past it, we have to have these conversations, and we have to really talk about it and start really talking about everything. Everything needs to be on the table, or otherwise, it's just you're patching over the cracks, and it will just rear its ugly head every single time. So, yeah, for me, it was more frustration and aggravation. Anybody? Mark, maybe? Yeah.
Me?
I think for me,
sorry, yeah.
Go ahead. I can finish. You can go ahead.
Sorry.
Me?
Yeah.
When I heard about that, I was 25th of May, I think it was.
Yep.
I couldn't believe it. My mouth was open. It just dropped to the floor. I hadn't been on Facebook or social media for about 10 months. I've been back in the country. People didn't even know I was back in the country. And I think last time I posted anything on Facebook was the 1st of August. And then 31st of May, when I saw that man kneeling in a yogic hero pose on his neck, with his hands practically in his pockets, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe the audacity, the calmness of what I was seeing in that scene. And the following day, I had to update my profile picture with its Stand Against Racism banner, and I just decided that is it. I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna tell everybody what I've experienced, because I've experienced a lot, and I'm not gonna hold back. From now on, if that is the state, that is the level that people can take things to. It's time to talk. It's time for action.
Yep, 100%.
I hear that. I mean, I think for me, and it's funny, just even talking about it now just brings it back. But the first 2 weeks in June, I pretty much cried every day.
Wow.
Like I lost count of how many times I just told people I'm tired, but every day, you still come to work, you're working, you still got to turn up every single day. I cried. And by the weekend, I was just somewhere else. I was just gone. And again, to your point, Mark, I was just like, they still don't see us. I think that was the thing that just, I just kept saying, they still don't see us. If you can do that to a man in broad daylight, it's like, wow. And then again, it made me just reflect on my journey, not just career-wise, just in life, but it made me reflect on just my career journey and just go, how many times have I emailed the same recruiter years and years ago about, are there any positions, when I can see a position on a website, but again, it's just like, no, there's nothing. And, we know that our name, you apply for a job, they look at your name and they're like, you're not for them. And for me, that just spoke to me, like, they still don't see us. But I was like, we are gonna keep talking about this. This, we cannot, this has to stop. And for me, I think like you, Mark, I just said, I'm not gonna stop talking now. Like, we've been talking, but we've not been talking enough.
Right?
If they don't want to see us, they will see us now.
Yeah.
So especially our industry is very small. It's very connected. You know, you work with people, you work with them 10 years after, and you make really lifelong friends. But we all just want to be seen. For me, the main important thing is like, I want to be seen exactly as my white counterparts are seen, regardless of, you know, regardless of anything. The color of your skin, your name should never be a reason to discriminate you. And I think, you know, I love the awakening. You know, it's a sad thing that happened to have to make this awakening, you know, come to be, but, you know, it's moving now. And I think, you know, all of us in this webinar, we are all sort of committed to doing more. And I certainly am fully committed to doing more.
Yeah.
So overall, how would you say your experience working in VFX has been as a Black person? So you kind of touched up on it a little bit, but kind of like into it. So how has it been? If someone was to ask you, what is it like being Black, working in VFX, what would your answer be?
And
do you want to start?
all right, okay, I'll take it. All right then. How has it been Black in VFX? So I'll be honest with you. You know, I could reel off a list of different experiences that I've come across being Black in VFX, or not, yeah, just in my career, basically. I mean, I kind of between me and my circle of friends, I've got a saying, like, when I kind of move on from a job, I'll tell them, like, yeah, outstayed my welcome, meaning that I'm kind of sharing. I'm on borrowed time. The moment I get my foot through the door, in the back of my mind, I'm kind of on borrowed time. And pretty much every job that I've left, there's been something that didn't sit right with me, and I've kind of, you know, whether it's overt or subtle or whatever, I've kind of always had something in the back of my mind where it's like, actually, that's not right. And, you know, if it's things like, you know, lack of trust in certain roles, micromanaging, second guessing, lack of promotions, just glass ceiling, symbolic promotions, you know, being scapegoated when things go wrong, labeled aggressive, flirtatious when you're being polite. You know, there's so many isms that we could get into. And to be honest with you, each individual event has been poignant and annoying, but I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was the first lesson when I first got into the industry. And I mean, I'll take you down this path. It ends up with Ian Wright, the footballer, being a fairy godfather. So kind of bear with me on this, right? But I first got into the industry. I've started 3 months. So before I've graduated from university, 3 months prior, I'm doing a runner as an intern at a company in London. As I'm working, you know, this is like moving. I'm a van driver. I'm a runner. I'm moving digibeaters around. I'm helping out VT ops. I'm getting lunches, teas, all that kind of runner stuff, right? So I've done that for 3 months, and during that period of time, I'm seeing people come and go in the company. So, you know, I'm noticing a trend that there are a lot of white kids that are coming and going and just only staying like a month or a week or two, and then getting promoted because there was like different factions of the company, and they were kind of moving over to their different opportunities and stuff like that. And I wasn't getting those opportunities. So my first instinct was that, okay, I'm just doing a 3 month stint. I'm going back to university. So maybe if that's why I'm not getting these promotions. So I rationalized it. Anyway, so next time round, after I finish university, I'll go back to the same company. I'm like, right, this is it. I'm going to get into the career now. First 2 months, I'm grafting. Same thing's happening. I'm like, these are people that are relatives of management, their clients, friends, and so forth. Their kids are getting these opportunities, and I'm still here grinding. I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is happening, man. So, anyways, long story short, I'm van driving. I ended up scratching the van at some point where I was parking up the van, right? And we had to do shifts, one in the evening about 9, and it closing up at 9 o'clock. But I scratched the van, and I'm a runner. I bought out of my 48-hour contract, the 40-hour working week, so I have to do double shifts. I've got to do the morning and the evening. So I'm opening up the office, closing it. It's a long day, but I'm doing this and I'm working on the weekends because obviously I'm still at university. I've got to supplement that. So these are 7-day weeks that I'm doing for, you know, best part of a month or whatever, trying to pay off this scratch. One evening, I'm really tired. I'm depressed. You know, it's hard work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to do the violin thing, but at that time, it's my first intro into the industry. I was really kind of like this isn't happening. I'm gonna jack it in XYZ. I'm moaning. Wanted to park the van. There's a car, an Aston Martin van in the Aston Martin car in the parking spot where the van is. Got to the point where I've got to wait for this car to move before I can park the van. Anyhow, gone back a few more times. It's not there. Ended up going there and bumping into Ian Wright. It's his car. So we're in this alleyway talking, and I'm like having a bit of a whinge, feeling sorry for myself, saying, "Oh, you know, this industry XYZ." And he had a radio job next door, and he was like, "Look." He gave me one of the best pep talks that I've ever had, and it stayed with me to this day. So throughout all those experiences, basically, he said, is the conversation we had, because we're from the same part of London. It was like he related to me, and he was like, "Look, you can't give up. You can't stop doing it, because it is so important that you are represented." And even for myself, with my status, I still have to put up with the bullshit. But the fact that we are here and we're visible and we're part of the conversation, whether we are as influential as we want to be, the fact that we are here alone should be enough to inspire the next generation and so forth. So you like giving up now is not what you're made of. That's not really where you're coming from. So you need to just keep on going. And believe it or not, that one conversation was what made me keep going. And I ended up, you know, being a runner for the next 3-4 years after that. But it got me to the point here where everything's manageable, everything's doable. And as much as you might feel being black is hard, you're built of different materials. So anyway, without trying to be too long-winded, Ian Wright, you're a legend, but those conversations is what gives people the energy and the boost to continue and put up with a lot of the stuff. Yeah, Mark, I'll toss it to you, mate. Sorry.
Me next.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm going into it, right? I'm not going to bore you with a lot of early career stuff. Basically, I came through art college. I had a pretty hard upbringing. My dad died when I was 11. My mum died when I was 12.
Oh, shit.
I had to get out of home when I was 16, pretty much to save my life from my family. And I'd always wanted to make films, seeing that my dreams to lift the World Cup for England got scuppered at 11.
Wow.
Now, I basically studied during the days. I studied during the days in my teenage years, and then I worked in the evenings. And then when I was 20, I swapped it round. I worked in the evenings, studied in the days. I'm still studying now. And that's all basically influenced from my dad. Now, let's just cut through and get into the visual effects industry. I'd already spent 10 years in the industry when I'd worked in. I'm going to point out, because this is the most toxic work environment that I've ever heard of, and I experienced it. Now, it was so unfair in there that they like to refer to it as the Wild West. So, you know, it was so unfair that if you weren't happy with it, if you were sickened by it, then they were happy if you left. It's like, too bad, you know, if you can't stand the heat. Now, a few of them, you know, they described their rule there as if it was Revenge of the Nerds, you know, after that poorly received 80s teen comedy, justifying their actions because at some point in their life, they were bullied, and now it's their turn to turn the tables. You know, I'd be there and they would openly ask in front of everybody, why do they have to be here? Admit it, you know, it's better without them.
Wow.
Something that was even said when I was in Germany by an Italian guy who'd gone over to Germany to work along with me. He wasn't even German.
Wow.
These people in this place explicitly practice white supremacism in private, where they think nobody's looking and where popular prejudice is just allowed to manifest. But instead, Instead, they justify it because they imply that they are the victim, that it's the whites that are now the new minorities. Now, sounds like nonsense, right? So if you dare to challenge that notion like I did, they will come at you. They will deem you as difficult because you don't entertain the gaslighting that they're trying to wash over you. You know, it's an insult to your intelligence. So you'll challenge it. Next thing you'll hear is the whole blood cheek as they turn around and walk away. You all know the catchphrase I'm talking about. So anyway, they came at me. They had fun with me. They made me their whipping boy, yeah? Not everybody, one of them used to say, one of the ringleaders, just that one. So, you know, he used to tell them, he used to introduce them. He used to say, listen, if nobody saw anything or nobody heard it, then it didn't happen. So if you'd say something, anything, everybody knew to just act offended. They'd do it in retaliation to the political correctness kind of laws that were becoming suggested, which they viewed as censorship and a curtailment of their freedom of speech. You know, like, oh, you can't say this, you can't say that. catchphrase. So every time I'd say anything, oh, you can't say that, you can't say that, as if they were trying to turn the tables again. And that's what they used to use as their justification for retaliating. Literally everybody, a very, very nerdy mentality, getting behind a bully, like as if it's their turn, you know, to get one back. Always looking to see if they can get the boot in. Now, they will sit there, and this is the kind of things they will do. They will take what you said, and they will twist it in order to stir shit to cause you trouble. To the next person, he said this, he said that. They will point blank lie in the office in front of your face to deem you as a stereotype through some kind of disparaging character assessment. They will collectively work to pit public opinion against you. They'd ask you a loaded question that you knew was not safe to answer, like, do you love your country? And then take my refusal to be goaded as an indictment and a revelation of me holding bad opinions based on some rules on a rule book that they've written. You know what I mean? They constantly, every day, they'll imitate the Ali G catchphrase, is it because I is black? Every time you say something. Now, hear this one. How many people can say they've had the experience of being threatened to be lynched? I know people, the man said to me, I know people in the army and the police, I play rugby with them. If I wanted to, I could get rid of him and nobody would be able to do a damn thing about it.
Wow.
How many of you, right, have had to sit amongst a group of people that would openly express their belief that Stephen Lawrence deserved what he got?
Yep.
How comfortable must you be to be able to say that out loud?
Or find some sort of justification in it, whether it's Mark Duggan, whether it's Stephen Lawrence, whether it's George Floyd. They're happy to deny that they're racist, but they don't deny that, like Winston Churchill, that they're white supremacists. One guy claims that Hitler had the right idea. He just went about it the wrong way. Right.
I had one incident, and this isn't even the incident I want to get to. I had one incident. I used to make the tea every day. And then one day I said to someone, I'm going to make you a special cup of tea. Their paranoia, they took it as if to say, oh, we must do something to our tea. They turned spitting in my teacup. Dirtying it up with their fingers, spitting in it. The guy next to me asked me if I'm not going to drink the tea. No, I knew exactly what they did. I could see it. He still asked me if I'm not going to drink my tea. I left it there to go cold. Now, if you were given an opportunity to do something in that place, the whole Britain First rule would prevail. You know, I had one person now coming to become an Oscar-winning supervisor, screaming at British First rhetoric, telling me that they were here first. If you don't like it, well, we were here first. And if you don't like it, go back to your own country.
Right.
This is on the shop floor in a studio in 2000. So this is them all doing their not on my watch bit. If they're doing their bit to hold the wall, the old British bulldog, do you know what I mean? And it was Britain First rhetoric. Now UKIP, before BNP, before that Enoch Powell, all the same business, still going on, and it ain't changed.
Right. Anne, what was your experience?
I'm gonna try and hold it together because that is tough to hear, Mark. And you know, before I say what I'm gonna say, I think for everyone who is watching this with us now, this is basically our stories we're telling you. And we have held this in for so long, but we have still managed to have successful careers. We're all still here. And, you know, for me, I think one of the biggest lessons I had, even before I joined the industry, you know, I grew up in the Army. My dad was in the Army, my dad was a retired general. And one thing my dad told me and my siblings is don't be afraid of anybody, right? And I think that has been one of the things that have just strengthened my backbone throughout my career, you know, inside and outside of work. When I started working, like, you know, years and years ago, and again, you know, I'm speaking as a black person, but also as a black woman, you know, one of the worst things that I've had happen to me, and, you know, like, it happened, and you know how you're like, did that just happen to me? I once had someone just stand behind me and just run their hands through my afro. I had this natural hair. but actually, like, they were getting off on it. Like, literally was just like rubbing their hands through my afro. And I sat there because I think I was like monitoring the render farm or something. And you sit there and then you keep talking to them and you're like, I don't know what I should have done.
Yeah. That's
You know?
outrageous.
And it's just like, but people do those things all the time, right? I've had a boss tell me, you know, talking to them, and I've had a boss tell me, this is a one-sided conversation. And basically meaning this is not your space. You are not welcome here.
Yeah.
If you want to be welcome here,
Yeah.
the conversation is one-sided, you know?
Mm.
And somehow I've always found the strength to leave places when I'm just not okay. When I'm like,
Yeah.
I cannot diminish myself because of this. I will
Exactly.
walk away.
Mm.
And you know, that experience of a boss telling me this is a one-sided conversation, you know, years and years after that, a different company, another senior person in the company, after like a bunch of guys who I was like looking after had ganged up on me, my boss came and said, you know, you need to learn to play the game a little.
Yeah,
And
basically,
that also means if you want to be welcome here,
know your role.
just know your place.
Mm.
It's also a one-sided conversation.
Mm.
And you know, that took me back to go like, I have worked so hard for years. Why do I don't play games.
Right.
One thing I do not do, you can ask people that know me.
Mm.
I am not one for playing games. I don't even play games for myself in that way, right?
Mm.
And so that was when I think that experience when he said, you know, you need to play the game a little, I was just like, no. I was like, no, I will not be doing that. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And I left. And I think after that, I started becoming even more confident with myself to just call things out.
Yeah.
And since then, I have had every version of, you know, the white woman tears in the industry. I've seen people gang up on me in front of me, literally gang up on me in front of me. And, you know, but for me, the thing is like, we are still here. Black people have an amazing amount of resilience, right? It doesn't mean that those things are okay. It doesn't mean that it's okay to treat us that way. And I'm hoping that what we can do is not let that happen to people that are coming down the line, people that are still in school, think they want to get into a creative industry. I don't want a young girl to worry about having an afro at work.
Exactly.
And, you know, I really don't want that to happen. So if we're speaking up, and honestly, thank you, Foundry, for just giving us this platform. You know, my experience it's been a struggle. You know, I said on a previous podcast, I come to work feeling like I'm always constantly wearing armor. And that armor is literally just mental toughness, right? Just mental toughness to just grind, get through the day, just work, you know? And, you know, and in all this time, especially this year, going through a pandemic, there's been some really good people that have just reached out. Some people at work have just been really just like pillars of strength. And they're not Black people. You know, we do have allies out there. But there have been some people that have just been genuine humans who just go, I see you. You matter to me. Are you okay? And that just helps separate, like, you know, there are some bad people there, and there are people that have done things to us. There's people that don't want us in this industry, but this industry belongs to all of us.
Exactly.
This industry is not for some elite type of person. It belongs to all of us. We all are worthy of being here.
That's
so
right.
If I were to summarize my experience, it has been a daily struggle of putting on armor, but it has been one that has afforded me the honor of meeting amazing people like you. You know, there's so many of us out in the industry, and we have been silent. We've been sort of almost, we are outnumbered, but we've also just been in different pockets. And now what has happened is we are just all connecting, and the force is just getting bigger and bigger, and we are just like, we are here. And I just want to encourage anyone that, you know, is feeling like they don't have a voice. We will be a megaphone for you. Find people that can be a megaphone for you and that can really speak up for you. Because like none of this should happen. Our experiences have not been great, and you should hear some of the other experiences that we have had. You know, they all happened. They're all real. But they didn't stop us. That's one thing I will say. They did not stop us.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your experience, guys. It's interesting that you mentioned the hair thing, Anne, because I think there was when I first started working, I used to feel extremely anxious the day I got my hair done. So if I got my hair done on a Friday, Sunday night, I'm just thinking, oh, for heaven's sake, what am I going to be asked tomorrow? I've been asked, can I touch your hair? And it's just a bit like, no, you can't. But
don't touch my hair.
It's just a lot. It sounds really petty, but
it's personal.
You have to think about. But you mentioned something about allies, and people can talk about allyship a lot. So during that whole 2 weeks in June, there was a lot of allyship talk, and I had to have a couple of harsh conversations and uncomfortable conversations with some of my friends, white friends, just about allyship, and kind of explaining that your silence is just as bad as it's just terrible, and literally having to explain what white privilege was. So we're talking about allyship. What does allyship mean to you? So to me, I think it's kind of like fighting the battle with me, and not having it as and having your mind like, oh, it's not my problem. Like, you could sympathize, but I want you to empathize as well. Like, kind of come with me, like go through this fight with me, and just don't leave me by myself. Like, I think there's power in numbers, and there is a thing called white privilege, and I want you to use it. I don't have it. So if you stand with me, I'm a lot stronger with you. And that is what I class as allyship. What is your definition of an allyship, Mark?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I've got to tell you, right, thinking about this beforehand, the first thing that there is a moral objection. There is no moral objection, or opposition towards racism by the community. I find that there's a lack of allyship going on. When you go to the companies, the moral objection towards it is outweighed by the sheer amount of profit they need to turn over. They don't have a zero tolerance towards racism. They have a zero tolerance towards bad publicity. Right? There's people who are on their own in that industry. People complain about bullying. But it's all the same people taking advantage of everybody. The whole problem is a very male patriarchal little industry. And it's a society that generally underestimates women far too much as well. And it serves them right that the whole Me Too movement came about from the way it did from that whole industry.
Yep.
Highlighted the gender crisis for women experiencing problems since women were women, and all of that behaviour. It's funny for me because it's shown towards women that they like. And we have a much worse racial crisis because so many people, men and women, are in support of keeping us out. So you want to look for allies, and you think you can stand together with women. I think, as is the case, I live with women, or I've lived with women, gay women. I'm cool. I'm all right. With say the NHS. People who work with the NHS who I believe are supposed to be the most diverse employers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I learned from that, like 70% representation of black and white women working in there.
You wouldn't believe it in the media, though, isn't it?
And they all stand together. But in our industry, we share a common problem, but the vast majority do not want to stand with you because the idea of solidarity is not strong enough to overcome the racial divide. And so much so, like, I can't look. Who do I look to? I look to my redhead friends. I've got redhead friends because I've got a lot of redhead friends, and they experience racism. They experience racism like black people experience racism. We want to call them gingers.
It's all bullying. Yeah,
it's all bullying. So, to the fact that, to be honest, this is the sad thing I have to say, that in actual fact, women have actually been responsible for showing me some of the worst racism that I've ever encountered. Now, if it's not that kind of victim role Karen incident that's going on, it's just a simple fact that if you even want to try and talk to someone about it, they've armed themselves with a feminist argument about sexism in a workplace that they'll use to extinguish your argument, or just use to talk over you to drown out your racial complaint. Do you know what I mean? And when they do it, it's vicious. They'll come right up to your face like some gangster looking for a fight. But they'll never do it to a white guy's face. Like, it's white people that have been oppressing their progression for employment all these years. They just want to use you as their punch bag. So, looking for allyship in there, it's hard. You won't find it from women. You're more likely to get some girl sneering at you as you walk past her down a corridor like she's in some American high school comedy. And then you'll try and you'll talk to a black guy in the industry. That's a hard one. Because they don't want any trouble. So they don't want you coming to them, bringing your problems to them and letting your problems rub off on them. They're
there too.
Experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get them on their own, and next thing you know, you'll hear the whole black story. you know, and then how they have to take it home. You know, it's that whole thing, like when women used to have to pretend to be asleep just to cope with being raped. You know, for black people, we used to have to laugh it off and then take home the trauma and deal with it there, you know. So, you know, people should be called out on their behaviours now. You know, there is no accountability. We never get a sorry. All you'll get is an all right then, you know, if you pull them up on something because you caught them trying to do a manipulative act, and then, you know, it's just, oh, I'll try and get you with another one. You know, for me, action needs to be taken for those people putting out the rallying cries, and they are out there.
Yeah. And what do you class as allyship?
I mean, allyship is just someone that allows you to be seen. You know, I keep using this a lot, but it is someone that is just, you know, that shares the space with you. You know, someone that is able to have your back when you're in the room and when you're not in the room, right? Not someone that's going to have your back and then say something against you when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
And there's not that many of them. Like Mark is right. There's really not that many of them. There's very, very few. I mean, if we go back to just what's happened in June, you know, a lot of companies put up their message and went like, you know, we support our employees, you know, we support our Black communities and everything. How many of those companies actually reached out to their Black employees and said, how are you doing? Are you okay? How can we help? How can we reach out to you?
Yeah.
Mine didn't. Just saying, you know? Yeah. So allyship is not, you know, there's this really, James Baldwin's birthday was just yesterday or 2 days ago. And there's a famous saying that he said, you know, I don't believe what you say because I see what you do. Exactly. Right. And in this case, I see what you don't do. So, you know, allyship is very few and far between. If you find, I've had some really good people over the years that have kind of helped me and kind of guided me. And allyship, you know, within the industry and outside of it, you know, it is important to just have good people that will kind of allow you to just have space to be equal. I'm not trying to, you know, this is not a competition for like, you know, survival of the fittest. This is just, let's just all, you know, we work in a creative industry where we should have fun, but you're always watching your back. Yeah. It's like, why are we doing that? That's not fun. That is not what we should be doing. And then we all work crazy hours. We're all on deadlines. We're all kind of, you know, so why can't we just come together and band together? Why does it have to be like that? I've had some good people, but, you know, allyship, companies need to just really, really look deep down and really, what does that really mean for them? Because allyship is like, you know, starting with hiring somebody regardless of what their name looks like, not just like saying, oh, I can't even pronounce that name, so that person doesn't make the cut. Allyship starts from there. You know, you have to really be open to seeing everybody for who they are. And otherwise, you know, it'll just be the same names year after year, doing the same films. You know, it'll just be that. And then how do the younger people come up? How do they gain experience? How do they get their first in? You know, it starts with that. It starts with a colleague. It starts with a boss. It starts with somebody in HR. It starts with, you know, people going to recruitment drives. All of those chains form allyship. Allyship is not just one person. It is a network of people that come together and say, we want to do better. Exactly. And currently, there's not that many. Courtney, how about you?
Yeah, no, I think on for me, I mean, yes, you can find good apples and bad apples in the individuals, but for me, I think this is more a systemic issue that I'm really kind of thinking needs to make the biggest amount of change, or at least show that they mean some of these the statements, solidarity and Black Lives Matter that they've put out, these statements that they put out. I mean, if you're an organization that's put out a statement like that, but then, you know, a week or two later you can go into a meeting and there's not one Black person in that meeting discussing issues that will affect Black lives at some point, whether it's directly or indirectly, and that voice is not being represented, you're missing the point. You're not really making the steps to really address it. So I think every company that really wants to address this and redress the balance of inequality, they need a specific department, diversity and inclusion. I personally think it should be separate from HR. I think it should be somebody, a full-time role, whether it's one person or a department of people. They need to have an understanding of sociology, psychology, history, economic factors. You know, it needs to be tackled holistically from the top down at all levels. So without that kind of seriousness, the level of seriousness being taken, then you're masking over the cracks and this superficial rhetoric that we've seen and heard before, and we don't take it seriously. So until that happens and we are represented at all stages, at all levels, reflective of our society, then for me it's allyship is a great concept, but until the practices happen, like Mr. Baldwin said, it's a bit empty for me. So that's what I'm looking for. What happens a year, 2, 3, 4 years down the line? Are we still here, or have we actually made improvements? That waits to be seen, but that's my idea of allyship.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Did you speak, Annie? I don't want to butt in. I'm all
Yeah.
from even mentioning George Floyd.
I'm good.
Down.
No, yeah.
Look, I got something that I just to follow on from what Courtney said. Basically, he's right. It has to start from the top down, really. I have 4 proposals that I think need to be done. And I think, first of all, an inquiry should be put through the industry. And whether that takes the form of a mandatory questionnaire that asks the community whether they've seen or experienced any behaviour that involves, unfairness, racial discrimination, or favouritism, or some demonstration of workplace eugenics, recognising the act of being discouraged opportunities, exclusion from groups subject to ridicule, insults, persecution, all that kind of stuff, based on arguments in favour of racial superiority, historical industrial success, nepotism, all of that business. Yeah? Sexual discrimination. I'm sure we all think we know what that is. Disability discrimination, class discrimination, workplace bullying, right? All of these sort of things, they should be done. And so there is a long-term impact, right? An eradication of behaviour and perpetrators of these offences from the workplace entirely. Yeah, if it comes down to the fact that people are going, yeah, this person, there is somebody, get them out, get rid of them.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Second, I think a new recruitment programme. Each company, I propose that for each, they should all strive that each department should be inclusive and have a balanced workforce consisting of men and women, ethnic minorities, and the people who never even get mentioned, people with disabilities. My ex-girlfriend was disabled. I've heard her story. Right? There is a long-term goal, an inclusive working environment populated by a workforce representative from across the board for all minority groups. Right? Number 3, an improved induction program. I do not think that these kids that are coming through, sitting in their bedrooms, playing their PlayStations and their Xboxes, are giving themselves that kind of education that will basically make them better people within the social sciences of a workplace. I do not think it's happening. I think it's got to come down to the companies that if they want to see people behave better in the companies, then they should induct them in how they want them to behave. And they just leave it to them to take it upon themselves because it's not working. Okay, the long-term goal, an industry that leads the country in demonstrating an increased awareness and demonstrates exemplary behaviour within that social sciences. That's what we should be doing. We should be setting the pace for others to follow. We're a small cottage industry. And finally, what the union is not doing, because all they're trying to do is see how they can constantly get more money, is an updated and reformed set of laws, a workplace bill of rights. One that recognises the needs of the workers of today, one that strives for a balanced, inclusive working environment that prevents the encouragement or fostering of a climate that accepts racial bigotry, sexual discrimination or sexual bullying or psychological manipulation, which I'll get to, and vindictive acts. These are the things that need to be put in place. Don't say you want to sort it out, we want to make it better. That's just PR. Yeah. You know what I mean?
100%.
Thanks for sharing that. Because that leads on to my next question, which is about, we can have these conversations, like we can all share our stories and stuff, but I think the greatest and most powerful thing we could do is find ways and educate ways in which we can move forward and make things better. So cause accountability, like in the industries, what ways do you think that we could suggest that could improve these things and make being Black in the workplace a lot better, getting more diverse, making industries diverse, and making people accountable for the decisions that they make and their actions, as opposed to getting away with it, like what happened with Mark's experience and stuff.
Oh, all right. Sorry. Was you gonna leave?
No, you can go.
Jump in. All right. Look, I mean, just to kind of, before we get to solutions, I just really kind of want to get over, kind of give a bit of historical context as to how we've got to this stage, because I think this is kind of been, it gets overlooked, or it doesn't get discussed enough as to how we have, we've generationally been looked at as second-class citizens. And the truth of the matter is, it starts when the first slave ship goes to Africa and takes slaves to the Western world as forced labor, right? I'm Jamaican, so I'm like 5th, 6th generation descendant from slaves, and people seem to gloss over it and say, "Oh, that was ages ago." Well, if most grandparents or great grandparents were alive during the Second World War, go back 2 generations, and now my family's property. They're not valued as human. I can't trace back my history, and I've got a Welsh last name. So for me, it's very real, right? Now, I went to Africa recently. I went to Ghana, and I've traveled a bit, and basically just to give you a quick synopsis, and this is like, I'm not going to try and be too long-winded with it, but you got to imagine the journey of a slave. So originally there'll be raiding parties inland of Africa. They would get captured. If you're unlucky enough to survive that, you then got to walk hundreds of miles to the coast. If you're unlucky enough to survive that, you then got to sit in a fort with no sanitation, no light. You're in dungeons. And mind you, this isn't just fit and healthy men. This is women and children. There's no sanitation. There's no food. Women are getting raped, people are dying and being born next to you in the same conditions. If you're unlucky enough to survive it, and this is the first time you're meeting white people, if you're unlucky enough to survive that, you then go on a boat, get taken across the Atlantic for however many weeks or months, and again, these white people are then packing you in like sardines, change you together. You're less than human, and then once you land on the land, on the wherever your destination is, whether it's Brazil or America or Jamaica or the West Indies, you now these same white people that have taken you from your home are now have forcing you into labor, where they're beating you, they're raping you, they're taking you from your family members. This is kind of like a systemic thing that has gone over, and the slavery period is like 5 or 6 generations in itself. So there's a bunch of norms and things that have been hardwired into the fabric of society that is built off the idea that black people are second-class citizens and not as valued as or not valued. So abolish slavery. That happens. But then now you've got there's no way home. You've got to try and figure it out in the system. They still don't think you're human, so there's still lynchings. There's still 12 years a slave. There's still all kinds of socioeconomic inaccuracies. People aren't educated. You get to the stage where you try to get educated, and you've got a relative middle class, right? You're well-to-do, or you're in comparison to people living in ghettos in the mid 50s, 60s. You get an invitation from the empire. You come to England, you try and set up here, but this is just as alien and hostile as whatever you've gone through from before. So I say all of that to say that there's nothing but constant reminders, and then once you're here, you're now, you're less than you're sub. What is it? Dogs, no blacks, dogs, and Irish, and you're subhuman all over again. And then you've got to navigate normal life as well as building a career and find some sort of job and stability for your family. You've also got to navigate the regular life of other people that are poor. So you've got like teddy boys and skinheads and NF and BMP, and then even the police that's there to protect you. But you've had to survive all of this to get to the point that we're at today. And there's nothing but reminders, whether it's statues, whether it's institutions like Lloyd's of London that is worth 53 billion, that insured slavers for their property. If they threw 133 of them, pay a deductible, will pay you for that. Reparations, we only stopped paying in 2015. Like, there's so much built on the fabric of this society that is off the back of slavery and the mistreatment of black people as a whole, that to get to any sort of healing, you have to face that front on. You have to address that and discuss it and be part of the solution in terms of losing that white privilege to a certain extent, where things might be uncomfortable. You have to kind of sacrifice the idea that if the Lloyd's of London can't be worth 53 billion pounds, and they know for a fact, they've said sorry for actually being the first insurers of slaves, but then that's where it stops. that's not healing. That's just a reminder that I'm less than. You know what I mean? So I think until we get through that, we're never really gonna do any healing. But one thing, like Anne said at the start, we are successful by our own merits. We are here in spite of that, not because of it. So as far as I'm concerned, we're pretty amazing people. We're pretty strong, resilient people. And for us to have achieved everything that we've done with all of that as a backdrop, or the kind of foundations of what we've had to survive in, there is hope going forward. And whether it's not this year or next year or 30, 50 years from now, you have to believe that there will be. But the only way that happens is if we have these honest and open discussions, and we treat people with equality, and there's representation at all levels, and everybody is taken account for the fact that is why there is this inequality in society. That is what we're working from.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Courtney.
Yeah, sorry. I had to kind of, because I think a lot of people don't, it doesn't get discussed, and that is the truth of it.
Yeah, definitely is the truth. And I think you made a lot of good points there. But I think there's work for us to do. There's always work for us.
Okay.
But I think as a whole, in terms of on the other side, what can we do as a whole? Like, not ourselves, but in terms of like industry wise.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. You're right.
And kind of
make
a more diverse place, and making people accountable for their actions, and not getting away with stuff. So
two things on that, just to kind of end it and to wrap it up. I think Black people should be creating their own safe spaces where they can be and express themselves. I've created a LinkedIn group called Sawubona, which is Zulu for I see you. It's the same greeting that they used in Avatar, but basically it's an African greeting that's quite common in different languages, where they say that they see you and they acknowledge your presence. So I think that's first and foremost. Us as Black people individually, we need to acknowledge each other and see each other and network, build, empower, and support each other. The Sawubona LinkedIn group is for creative artists to join and discuss things, and if there's job opportunities, work opportunities, if recruiters want to come in and offer, diversify their workforce, there's going to be a bunch of talented people in there, and it's going to help me moderate that. And if anybody's on there that is Black and in this creative industry, I'll Google it or type it in Sawubona, Sawubona, in LinkedIn, and join the group, ask to be invited, and I'll add you, or me or one of the moderators will add you. And from a industry point of view, I think one of the things that is a bit of a bugbear is that in terms of content, we need accurate representation, accurate and fair representation. So we need more. So whether it's all the TV shows, if you've got a commercial TV show or film and we're not being represented accurately, you're counterproductive, you're outdated, you're missing the point. In terms of we don't need in our representation, we don't need to be hypersexualized or hypercriminalized or hyper anything. We just need to be seen as normal, and that kind of humanizes us, because a lot of the things, that the stereotypes that we see, is dehumanizing us and makes it acceptable for people to think that I can have a knee on a man's neck for 9 minutes and hear him suffer and die and I've got impunity from that. So we need to be recognized as human. We need to, on all levels. So we need more characters like My Wife and Kids. We need more stories from like Insecure. We need more films like Uncorked. Without that, then you play into that stereotyping or that kind of dehumanizing of the Black people. And I think that for me is one of the biggest things in terms of the media industry. We need to hear our voices, and we need our stories told, and it needs to come from us, not from people that think they understand us. That's
great. Anne?
So I think one thing that I'll say, actually, just because Courtney gave a bit of a history, nobody is born a racist, right? And the history and evolve is like, society has taught people that this is the right way to treat someone, but it actually is. Nobody's born a racist. But the other thing is like, what can we do going forward? Because, I'm, like you said, we're all committed to having these conversations, but one thing we need to do is, if anybody's listening to this or watching this, and you've experienced, you need to speak up. Nobody will tell our story for us. Nobody is going to tell our stories for us. You need to speak up. If you cannot speak up, speak to someone who can speak up for you. Find allies. There's allies, black people, white people. There are people that will speak up for you, that will say, that will actually give you a stage to be able to speak. You need to speak up. You need to hold your teams, your managers, your companies, you need to hold them accountable. If they do not listen to you, they do not deserve you. That's one thing I will say. It's going to be hard. Our journeys have been hard, and it's going to continue to be hard because this work that we're doing is not going to suddenly make everything change overnight. This is like we are a work in progress now, but we're committed to doing the work. So yeah, like I said, speak up, hold your companies accountable. Do not give up. I think I have to stress this.
Yep.
Do not give up. It will be hard. I remember years and years ago, this maybe like 7 years ago, I was just like, work was getting to me. There's a lot of things getting to me. And my dad called me, and all he said to me, he said, "Don't be tired."
Yep.
That's all he said.
Yep.
And he said it in our language as well. But he said, "Don't be tired."
Mm.
And I totally understood what he meant.
Right.
It will be hard. The very fact that we are outnumbered, the very fact that our skin color is different, the very fact that they just don't see you means that it is already hard. And it's not going to be, it's just going to be like that, right? Hopefully we'll get to a point, maybe our children's generation will get to the point where they're all just like equal, but it will be hard, but you cannot give up.
Exactly.
Reach out and network with as many people as you can that will help you, that will advise you, that will coach you, that will guide you, right? There's so many of us and we've all been scattered around, but we're all kind of coming together. We're all connecting. I'm just going to shout out to one amazing person that I know is watching this, Simon Devereaux, and we'll speak about Access VFX afterwards. Access VFX is doing so many amazing things, and Simon is, when I say true ally, I call him one of the woke ones. He's a woke brother. So Simon is doing a lot of amazing things with Access VFX, but connect to people that will allow you to be seen. Do not give up. The industry is not all bad. If we love our jobs and we love what we do, our experiences have been difficult, but the industry is a place where you can really express your creativity, and you just need to be given the platform to do that. So please, please, please don't give up. As much as our stories have been hard to hear, they did happen, but please don't give up. That's my 2 cents.
Right, great. So Mark, you mentioned some. Did you want to mention any others? Because I know you mentioned 4.
No, I mean, I'm babbling on, aren't I? But what was not being funny or rude? What was that last question? Because we covered so much ground.
Yeah.
Like Courtney spoke so well. I was, wow.
He was looking at, go on, Debbie, sorry. Yeah.
Was what companies can do to make it better. So it's like not putting the work on us, because I feel like we're doing the work already.
Mm.
My mum will always tell me, I've always grown up kind of with I think it's called I've lost the word, but I've always felt like I had to prove I was supposed to be where I was.
Oh, right.
And I think we can all do the work. We're always going to do the work. We're always going to work 10 times harder. But I think on my side, one thing we could do, to give an example to Mark, is I think HR could do a big job. They do it quite well at Foundry, but I just think having, like you mentioned, one person allocated to dealing with that stuff makes a very big difference. And not just this here and there training on diversity and stuff. Like, let's make it very clear, like, what sort of diversity we're talking about. Because it shouldn't just be a box that should be ticked. It's a real thing. For the fact that I have only met Anne recently, and we've had the experience as a lot. And it just clearly shows that. But there's certain things that I know I can't do at work. And something should be made clear as well. I think they say there's a zero tolerance to racism, but is there really a zero tolerance to racism? Make it clear and saying that if you do behave like this, there are repercussions, and I think there are that many repercussions, because there's a lot of underhanded racism that doesn't seem to, like very subtle ones. So I think HR is definitely one that they could kind of, I think hiring a main person will be very good, and being intentional about hiring people like Black people. It sounds really bad, but just like one of my friends was just like, oh, but you're the only Black person in the team. They probably only hired you because you're Black. And I was like, if that's the case, hire me because I'm Black, but I'll prove that I was here to do the work anyway.
Right, exactly. It's a fact.
Just give us the opportunity. And honestly, You might regret it, but you might not. But just literally just giving the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think, sorry, just to jump in, but another companies, I think, first of all, just need to acknowledge that there's a problem. Just like they need to name it and say there is a problem, there is systemic racism, there is bullying. We don't give, I've been in so many companies and teams where I am 0.01% of the population.
Yeah.
And so for that very fact, how do you progress and how do you get a word in? How do you get a seat at the table? Companies really need to just acknowledge that we don't know how to do this. We actually don't know. Maybe they don't know, but then what are they going to do? Because a lot of companies have said a lot, they're not doing a lot currently. They really need to just acknowledge and say, you know what, we didn't get it right. I shouldn't have tweeted that thing and not done anything. Speak to your employees, listen to them. We are all human. Right? Speak to them, allow them to be seen, allow them to be heard, and then start putting things in place. And and Mark said, call out those people that are not doing it right. Let's just not keep brushing things under the table, because we'll have this conversation 10 years from now. And then it will be like, oh yeah, where do we go from here? Call things out, absolutely. But companies need to acknowledge that this is a thing, and we will help you acknowledge it, most definitely.
Definitely.
Listen, there's a company out there right now, let me tell you, the people that I work with, Oscar winning company, man, that went out there and changed their name, not without a nod, knowing that it was using the name of a symbol that is representative of white supremacy, hiding it in broad daylight. There is a company out there doing that right now, right? Happy to fly their little flag invisibly for people who want to know.
Right.
Okay, we got problems in that industry, and they're trying to keep it the way it is, right? And it's an ugly situation. You've got people trading with them, doing jobs with them, swapping jobs, trading shots. Everything's cool in the game. They don't really care. Too tough.
You know what? Off the back of that, I mean, one thing I will say, and I'm sure, and I'm 100% believe that's going on, and there's all kinds of underhanded stuff being discussed behind doors that we're not privy to. But what I would say is, in history, if you was to ask a slave owner or a Nazi German or whatever, if you was to speak to them and ask them to justify their actions, they probably could. They could probably rationalize it in the moment and not really understand the horror of, or the what it is that they're actually doing. We have the power of hindsight, looking back to know quite clearly what's right and wrong, who was good and who was on what side of the fence in those instances. Only thing I would say to anybody listening, if this, whether it is or it isn't, is yet to be seen, but let's pretend it, or let's assume it is. If this is a seminal moment in history, if this is a pivotal moment, make sure you're on the right side of the fence when 50 years, 100 years, 300 years from now, we look back and people look back at your legacy. Make sure you're on the right side of the fence, because when the dust settles, we'll know, and you and your descendants have to live with that going forward. So, play your games, but that status quo doesn't last forever.
May I jump in, Annie, if I may, really quickly? I was thinking the same thing, Courtney. With that one, I was thinking there's a lot of people that are kind of jealous because they think that we've got this thing that we've got about us as Black people. We're fighting the powers, and it's like, it's not fair. They don't have that. Well, listen, you don't have to. You're thinking, oh, you can't take the black side of the argument. You've got to stand on the white side because the majority rule, peer pressure. Where you can be if you don't. Choose to be an abolitionist.
Yeah.
Right? You want something cool to do?
Yep.
Like, you want to create some cool flag, be an abolitionist. That's very cool right now.
Exactly. It's going to be hard and it's going to be tough and it's not going to be palatable, but it needs to be done.
And you'll feel black.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Well, thank you guys so much for giving us your time. It's been a really, really lovely conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Foundry and Jen, for organising this.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Great idea and such a great conversation. I wish we could be here for longer. Jen has shared some resources in the chat, which gives videos, places that you can, pretty much things that you can do after this call. So there's research. They've got the LinkedIn profile that Courtney made as well with some other ones, and there's loads of films that we can literally just educate ourselves on. I don't think it stops here. Just continue to educate yourself, read books, and just kind of broaden your mindset on it and kind of get a deeper understanding. You'll get more insight from what Courtney explained about the years. There's stuff about just everyday stuff that I even didn't know until I started to research as well. So Jen has shared it together, and I think she'll put it somewhere else as well. But once again, thank you guys so much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it, and let's just keep our foot on the gas. And keep going.
Yes.
Keep your foot on the neck, so to speak.
Pretty much, yes. But thank you guys so much. It's been so great.
No, Dami, thank you for hosting, and thank you for the
Dami.
Foundry for taking these kind of steps, because these are the kind of conversations we need to be having in public forums. And this is just tip of the iceberg, and it has to be looked at holistically and in its entirety. So if we're really going to make change, then let's try and start to heal the trauma with understanding and then action, you know. But yeah, let's thank you again.
Thank you all. Thanks to everyone that's been watching as well. Just honestly, you guys have really, I've been reading the comments. Thank you so much for being a part of this. It means a lot to us. And thank you, Dami. Thank you, Foundry. Really appreciate you guys a lot.
Thank you.
And
well,
for
thank
me,
you.
yeah, I think it's been great. If I just say thank you very much. And, you know, I sympathize with everybody suffering out there in the industry, won't care what color you are. You know, I know that there's a lot of people underneath it, what's going on. There's a lot of gaslighting going on in that industry, and that's something that I think should be another topic high on the agenda. That's me.
Right, great. Well, thank you everyone so much, and
That's
everyone
all.
have a lovely day and evening.